Hi, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to this hangout, and welcome to my living room here in San Francisco, California, where it is nearing the end of a beautiful and brisk and sunny afternoon. I'm so happy to have the chance to spend some time with you remotely from the other side of the country and to share a few thoughts and take some of your questions. So as I say, welcome. I was reading an article in the Times today from some expert gurus giving those of us that are involved in web broadcasts some fashion or style tips. And they gave some very sober advice about how it was important to wear very plain and neutral colors like navy blue, to avoid patterns, and to favor very simple backgrounds, monochromatic, like beige and so forth. So yeah, welcome. I think you are aware that you have the opportunity, and indeed I encourage you to, at any point during this broadcast, write me questions in real time. You can type them in the comments section at the foot of your video screen, and I'd be delighted to take those at any point. I thought I'd just open with a few thoughts in this strange and unsettled time about where we all are. And one thing that's been going through my mind the last few days is the value of gratitude. And so in that context, I wanted to express my gratitude to so many people in the New Haven community for the way that I have been so warmly welcomed back to you after an absence of basically 30 years. It's been incredibly touching, and this just seems like the perfect time to say thank you. First of all, to those members of the audience out there that are listening. Pavarotti used to say that applause is the musician's oxygen. And if that's the case, I think that I've been given a supply to last me well into the next calendar year. I've been so touched by the welcome that you've shown the musicians on stage and myself, and the fervor of your applause. It's really a wonderful thing, and so on behalf of all of us on stage, thank you for that. And speaking of those on stage, I want to express my gratitude to all of the amazing musicians of the New Haven Symphony Orchestra. It's been a fantastic first few months for me. I couldn't be happier with the kind of music that we're making, and I am in awe of the fantastic combination that exists on stage. The sheer talent of the individual and collective voices of the musicians, but also the spirit in which they are expressing their art. It's one of cooperation and concentration and focus and passion. And it's a wonderful combination of gifts to be able to bring to the table. And while I'm inevitably disappointed that our stride has been temporarily halted by events, I am really looking forward to picking up the thread again and resuming where we left off. We've really just hit our stride, and I'm so privileged and fortunate to be part of this 125-year-old tradition that we have the privilege of maintaining. I'd also like to thank the board of directors of the New Haven Symphony, who've also welcomed me with similar grace and warmth. I think it's telling that in the face of this pandemic and all of the attendant worries and complicated decisions that need to be made, the first of which was being forced to cancel these upcoming concerts, the board nonetheless, a week or so ago, in the first action that it was able to take, established this Musicians Relief Fund. And more on that later, on what you can do to help. But I think it speaks volumes that the board decided immediately, without prompting, to do the right thing and to do it right away. And last but not least, I want to express my gratitude to the women and men of the staff of the New Haven Symphony. They have risen to the occasion with, I will say, exemplary teamwork, and it's entirely emblematic of the kind of dedication that they bring behind the scenes to fulfilling our mission with passion, professionalism, joy, good humor, and dedicated teamwork. The musicians and I are lucky enough to soak up a lot of applause on stage, but the staff are unsung heroes. And I want to give a big shout out to our amazing team of Elaine and Sherry and Charity, Caitlin, Shire, John, Katie, Han, Forrest, Marvin, and Dan. And apologies if I left anybody out. I'm mortified if I have, but I'm so proud to be part of this amazing team. And with that, I want to just say one more thing before we go to questions, about where we are now and where we might be going. Without wishing to prognosticate, I think it would be a fool that would predict where any of us might be in a week, 2 weeks, 2 months' time. But I thought in my conversations that I've been having up and down the country with various musicians, and I've had many, many of those the last few weeks, it's given me a certain amount of optimism. One refrain that I've noticed coming from everybody's lips is how disappointed we all are as musicians not to be able to make music live. We are engaged in all sorts of measures, hopefully some of them very creative and successful, for giving whatever we can to our various communities in the form of online feeds and things such as this. But it's been very clear to me that we all miss tremendously the live aspect of making music. And this reinforces something that I've felt very strongly in this digital age, that our best commodity, and one that cannot be reproduced no matter how good the video connection, no matter how fancy your audio system is at home, nothing beats being in the same space as a group of musicians playing live for you. I call it a kind of secular communion, a coming together of people with a common purpose and feeling those vibrations of sound through the air in real time. And my prediction, such as it is that when we are all able to get back in the same room as one another and feel safe in that, we are going to experience an intensity of feeling that few of us have ever had before. I guarantee you that intensity will be coming at you like gamma rays from the stage. But I also predict that those of you that know and love our art form will be as hungry to receive that as we are to give it. That day can't come soon enough, but in the meantime, the hope that when it comes, it will create something truly special is something that sustains me, and I hope it sustains you as well. And with that, let's go to the question board. I know that we have a number of questions on tap, and so I'm just gonna go through these and see where it leads us. So as I say, if you're just joining us, do please feel free to lob me some questions by typing them in at the foot of your screen in the comments bar. Keep them coming, and then we'll see how long it takes. So Tina Kolura asks me actually three-part questions, questions in 3 parts. First, how did you first come to be interested in music? Well, that's a nice general question. Music has always been part of the furniture part of the furniture to me, as it were, growing up. My mom was a grade school music teacher, my first music teacher, in fact, and she always had the classical music station in growing up in near London. It was the BBC Radio 3, so that anytime that I came home from kindergarten, I would always hear the radio on. So these were the sounds that I grew up with. So I can't remember a time that I didn't have music in my life. It leads me to our secondary question: is what is your primary instrument? And that was flute. It's been a long time since I've dared to take it out of its case, but at one time I was actually reasonably decent flutist. I started when I was 9, and I continued all the way through college. I was lucky also to pick up the cello when I was 11, and so I had a good few years of that, both playing in orchestras on both instruments. And I sort of crashed my way around the piano, as I have to some extent, being a conductor. I never really had a lesson, so I taught myself, and it shows. And the only person that's ever allowed to hear me play is myself. I would never inflict my piano playing on anybody else. But it served me well as a conductor. It gives me the ability to condense scores more or less, and to analyze things a little bit more effectively. But I love the fact that I was a flute player, because it gave me the sense of where the orchestra sounds from the geographic center. And it gave me the idea of what it means to be a soloist within the orchestra, and to, I hope, understand from the inside what wind players need from a conductor in the way of support. At the same time, the string section is the very core of the orchestra, and I really am grateful for the experience that I had as a cellist, to have some idea of how string sound is produced, as well as to know what it feels like to sit at the back of a string section, and how much harder it is to be 40 feet away from a conductor than it is to be much closer. And I try very much to feel simpatico and to conduct the backs of the string section when I'm on the podium, because they need my help more than anybody else. Tina also asks, is there a piece of music that's especially challenging that you'd like the symphony to perform? That's a good question. Well, I'm a sucker as an orchestral player myself. I think I speak for many of my colleagues when I say that what really gets us up and fired is to play composers like Mahler and Strauss. And so there's a long list of both of those composers that I would absolutely love the New Haven Symphony to perform. Those are big pieces, and big pieces are expensive. So those would be kind of on my luxury list. But the fact is that there's so much incredible repertoire that we can pick and choose from every day, that I'm just so happy to perform. But those are pieces that really challenge the orchestra as a virtuoso instrument. And that's something that I would love to do more as time and money permits. Sarah Duplessis asks me the following. She says, I'm 49 and just started playing the violin for the first time in my life. That's awesome. She says, so far I've played for a little over a year. I made a lot of progress. Good for you. But with all of the experience that you have, what advice would you give a middle-aged novice musician? Well, first, Sarah, congratulations on taking that leap. I'm so impressed that you have done that. If I would offer any advice, it is to, no matter what, find the joy in your playing. Practice, of course, because nobody gets better on their own. But in that practice, in that act of practicing, always focus on the positive and the joy that music making gives you. And if you can, at a certain point, if you feel comfortable bringing somebody else into that mix, if you know somebody that plays the piano, or if there are any other people that are in a similar situation, like another violinist, a violist, and a cellist, maybe you could form a string quartet. But perhaps the quickest way to make music with somebody else would be with a pianist. So use the internet, maybe put out something, say, is there anybody that likes to play, has just started the instrument themselves, would like to make music together? Because music is really made to be shared with one another, whether it's with an audience or with other musicians. And you'll find that if you add a piano into the mix for violin, you have a whole new series of repertoire that's at your fingertips. But most of all, congratulations. I think that's really phenomenal that you've spent the time to do that and take on the considerable challenge of playing the violin. It's not easy. It's so unnatural. I don't understand, all you violinists out there, how you spend your life with your elbow turned like this and turning your wrist. The cello is so much more natural. Just kidding. So let's see. Matthew Clark asks me, do you have a favorite piece you conducted this season? Oh man, that's a long list for me to choose from, and almost impossible. I honestly say I can't answer that, because the minute I answer one piece, the next second I'm going to realize, well, there was that piece that was so special. But if I had to, for reasons that I'm going to get to into a later broadcast, the experience of doing the Florence Price Symphony in March was incredibly meaningful to me, and I think to all of us on stage. And sometimes I gauge how much a piece means to me by the kind of wake that it leaves. When you're a speedboat and you have this wake behind you in the water, and for me that's a sonic wake. How many days is it that the music is still floating around in my head? And the fact that it is that maybe 2 weeks now, 3 weeks, I think, since we did that, I'm still remembering parts of that performance. But I'll have the chance to talk about that a little bit later on in some of our next sessions. Vin Vergulto, with my apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, says, do you enjoy conducting Wagner? I have not heard any at the Symphony while I've been a subscriber. Interesting. The short answer is yes, I do. In fact, I spent some time this morning tuned into the Met website, who is broadcasting, many of you know, some past performances of opera, and I listened to the first act of Die Walküre with the amazing Eva Marie Westbrook and Jonas Kaufmann singing Sieglinde and Siegmund. And so I love conducting Wagner. I haven't conducted a huge amount because I'm basically a symphony conductor and not an opera conductor. But those chunks of Wagner that I have been able to do, I found very, very satisfying and challenging. Wagner's a very hard composer to sustain the melodic line and understand structure. So I would love to do some more. You are right. Now that I'm thinking about it, the symphony has not really done much Wagner, but there's some beautiful pieces that don't require you to assume the mantle of being in an opera pit. So thank you for the suggestion. I'm going to take that to heart and see if I can incorporate something like, I don't know, the Siegfried Idyll, one of my favorite pieces, or maybe one of the preludes into future seasons. So nice, a nice thing. Question from Christy Stroud's kids: how long does it take you to memorize music? Well, that's also a very good question. It depends on the piece of music. If I were, for instance, memorizing a Rossini overture that I already know, I think it would be fairly quick. It would take me maybe a few hours, let's say 6 or 7 hours. But if it were a much bigger piece, a much longer piece, then that would take me considerably longer. I'll give you an example. About 3 years ago, in my summer music festival in Sun Valley, we performed Mahler's Third Symphony, which was a piece, in fact, that William Boughton also did with you, of course, as his last concert as music director. And those of you that heard that will know that that is about a 95-minute symphony. And I used it as an opportunity to really set myself a kind of an Everest to climb. And it was something I was doing for the first time, and I decided to do it from memory. And so I started studying it in the middle of October, and the performance was the following August. And with the exception of maybe 5 or 6 days in between October and August, I spent time with that piece every single day. Sometimes for as little as 10 minutes, sometimes for as much as 5 hours. I lost I lost count of the number of hours it took. I'm guessing 150, something like that, probably more. But it was time well spent. So usually when I'm memorizing something, it's something in between 3 hours and 150. Chelsea Tipton, our wonderful pops conductor, asked me a question. Hi, Chelsea. So good to hear from you. He is mentioning that he's looking forward to welcoming me on our pop series next season with John Williams. Yes, that is one thing I can let you know behind the scenes, a little bit of a sneak peek. I will be conducting on our pop series next season in a program consisting of all John Williams. And I'm so looking forward to that. Chelsea asks me if I've ever met John Williams and if I can share my thoughts about his music. Regrettably, I have not met John Williams, at least not yet. That would be such a thrill for me because I've admired his music for many years. And I would say that the older that I get, the more I admire what he does. It's an extraordinarily difficult art to compose film music, but there are a number of wonderful film score composers out there, but I think John Williams is in the category of his own. He knows how to go sort of, how can I put it? He knows how to deliver things intravenously, that what he gives us when we listen to his music is something that goes straight into our bloodstream and really straight to the heart with the simplest of means. If I just were to sing ba-da, ba-da, you all know that means Jaws, right? I mean, just 2 notes. And that hopefully gave you a little bit of a chill. And so with sometimes the simplest of means, he can get across a primal psychological state like fear, or the most wonderful sense of joy as you listen to E.T. in that iconic scene where the bicycles are revving up and suddenly in a gravity-defying move, they crush your screen in front of the moon, and John Williams' music swells. Just to name 2 examples, it's an extraordinary gift that he has, and I am so excited to present an entire evening of his music. And maybe one day I'll get to meet him. That would make me awfully happy. Chelsea, you are such a wonderful part of our family. We send you all of our love from the West Coast and from New Haven down to you in Texas at this time for some very special reasons. Know that you are always in our thoughts, and we send you all of our fondest wishes. The wonderful Adam Crow, who is our principal tubist of the New Haven Symphony, asked me, will any pieces from this season be moved to next season? Adam confesses that he was looking forward to Mason Bates's Liquid Interface. Thank you, Adam. And yeah, I was totally looking forward to Liquid Interface as well. And I'm doubly sad because it's also been a casualty for me here on the West Coast with the Marin Symphony, which was also to present that piece next month. I suppose the consolation prize for me is that I got to conduct it this past season in Sun Valley. But the answer to your question broadly is yes. It is my intention at this point to pretty much reschedule everything on the classic series that we've lost for future dates. I would say off the top of my head, it's more likely that that would be in the 21-22 season, since we've already got artists and programs lined up for the coming season. And I think it would be more likely too much of a disruptive move to try and slot things in for the 2021 season. So it's more likely we'll do things in 21-22. So the answer is yes, we're going to do this, but I think in all likelihood it's going to be 21-22. I'm a really good friend of Mason's, and it's just been so wonderful to get to play his music in a number of places. As I said, I really hoped to bring Liquid Interface to the season finale in one of my favorite programs of the season, circulating around the theme of water and French music, but it's just going to have to wait for another day. Carol Warshaw, one of our wonderful violists, asks me a very nice broad question. What is the favorite part of your job? It's a nice broad question. It's also very hard to answer because there are so many different parts of the job. But I would have to say, I mean, ultimately it's all about the concerts and connecting with, through the orchestra to connect with the public, because without without the public, we would be playing to an empty hall. And so I love an audience's reaction in two ways. One when it's to a familiar piece of music like Beethoven's 7, for instance, or Tchaikovsky 5, but also when it's a piece people are hearing for the first time, like the Florence Price Symphony, and to see the excitement that that performance generated is a particular thrill. And it makes me very, very happy to think of that as part of a job, because I really, at the end of the day, find it almost impossible to conceive of this as a job. For me, music was something that I always had as part of my life. And suddenly somebody started paying me for doing it. And that just almost felt a little strange the first time. Yes, of course it is a job, but it feels more like, I don't know, something even bigger than that. I'm struck by the words of one of my heroes, the amazing writer and polymath Christopher Hitchens, who's one of the greatest writers on any subject that I think we could ever come across. And he once said that being a writer isn't so much what I do as what I am. And maybe at the risk of poaching that thought, being a musician isn't so much what I do for a job, it's really who I am as a person. So sharing that love of music with my colleagues on stage and the audience is really a phenomenal pleasure for me. And by the way, I wanted to mention this. I said at some point earlier on that I was very grateful to the board for establishing immediately the musicians relief fund. I'm happy to say that as of the time of this broadcast, that fund has something just shy of $18,000 in it. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody out there that has donated to the fund so far, whether it's a cash donation or in the form of turning back your tickets. And if you haven't yet done so, I would love you to consider the possibility. It would mean so much to my colleagues on stage who have, like many millions of people in this country, been hit by a 2x4 immediately in the form of a major lost stream of revenue for them. It means a great deal for them and us to be in your thoughts. And so if you can find it within your purview to make a donation, whether it's turning in your tickets or just simply writing us a check or giving us a credit card, I know it would mean a tremendous amount. I understand, of course, that at this time there are many reasons to give to many causes all over the country, but do please consider what you're able to do from yourselves to our musicians. I know that I speak for them and saying to you that they would appreciate every single dollar that you're able to help out with at this time. Shire asks me, did you ever have something interrupt a live concert that you were conducting? How did you react? Um, yes, a number of things have happened uh, over the course of my career that that were not scheduled. Let's put it that way. Okay, I'll share with you one of the funniest, and it involves a tour that I did in 1992 with the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra. We were touring Spain and France and Italy, and as you might imagine, this was in the summer tour. These concerts took place out of doors, and as part of the Spanish culture, they started very late. Most of these concerts started at 10:30 at night, and so I remember vividly being in the middle of this square in some town somewhere in the middle of Spain. I can't even remember where it was, and conducting Mahler's First Symphony. And all of a sudden, the flock of birds flew over our heads. And they did what birds tend to do when they're flying. And we were the unwitting recipients of their largesse. Can I put it that way? And to their credit, the orchestra carried on playing, and we just sort of looked at each other, slightly aghast, and with my eyes rolling. And I thought, well, you know, there is the adage: the show must go on. And of all the things to be visited by in the middle of a performance, one thing you never expect is a flock of birds with loose bowels. C'est la vie. So that was our reaction. Thanks, Shire. Caitlin, our amazing education director, asks me, what am I looking forward to next season? Well, of course, just picking up the thread and doing anything with the orchestra at this stage would be really phenomenal for me. I think the opening concert, about which I might be able to share a few details with you at this point, will be really special to me. We are going to be celebrating the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, as most people are, and we're kind of going big on this. And the season opener for the classic series will be a performance of his Ninth Symphony. And boy, if it turns out that is it will be our first classic series since all of this, and if we're able to do that, that will be quite a note to joy. And we'll be prefacing it with a very, very powerful piece as well by a young composer, Joel Thompson, called Seven Last Words of the Unarmed. And it is a phenomenally moving piece about 7 African Americans that have lost their lives to various authority figures. And the text for chorus and orchestra, it consists of their last known words before they were killed. It is a piece that will leave you a changed person, and is going to prove, I hope, I intend to prove an incredibly powerful counterbalance to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So that's, I think, the piece I'm looking forward to. She asked me also what has been my most favorite educational moment, from this past season, which reminds me what I had hoped to be doing this week, is conducting our young people's concerts and reaching what would have been hundreds and hundreds of kids of all ages. And it's one of my great disappointments that circumstances have forced those to be canceled. I've been doing concerts for young people for my entire career, more than 30 years at this point. And it gives me a special kind of joy to bring music, the thrill of discovery, to young minds, often for the first time. I have, however, been delighted to spend some time with local groups of young musicians, orchestras and bands, and to visit some high schools and middle schools more of which I had hoped to be doing in this next month. And again, that's a disappointment that those appointments won't be able to take place. But the work that I'm able to do out in the community with those groups of young musicians is incredibly fun and joyous for me. So it hasn't been enough of that this season, but there will be a lot more of that to come. John Leibensberger asked me, what is your second favorite art form? My second favorite art form? Well, I would guess that would have to be the visual arts. As you might be able to tell by the backdrop, I love strolling through museums, and one great advantage of me being now resident in New Haven as well is that it's given me a chance to reacquaint myself with the British Art Center, and also have the chance to go down to New York and possibly my favorite museum in the world, which is the Frick. And so I love the visual arts, and I can't even draw. Let me put it this way. I am filled with such admiration for artists. You do not want me ever as your Pictionary partner, because like a stick figure causes me to like chew my lip in concentration. It's really hard for me to get a stick figure out. And if you ask me to draw a dog or a cat, that's already above my pay grade. It looks like some mutant creature from an outer planet. So never play Pictionary with me. Marjorie Shansky, our wonderful assistant principal flutist, asks me, if you were having a dinner party with 3 other conductors, living or dead, who would you invite? Oh, wow. Who would I invite? Living or dead? Claudio Abbado. The greatest, just an amazing person. Extraordinary human presence, and just amazing conductor. I never met him, but I'm a tremendous admirer of his. I think he was a very shy person in real life, so I don't know how he would be at a dinner party, but hopefully if it were just small enough and we weren't freaked out by 4 conductors being at the dinner table at once. Oh, that actually is a freaky thought, come to think of it. We might have to practice social distancing. And you get all too many egos next to one another. There could be some major disturbance in the force. So maybe a nice big dining table with the appropriate distance. So probably Carlos Kleiber, because again, an absolute brilliant man. I think kind of by all accounts, like cray-cray, like a really bizarre personality, but an absolute genius. And had a tiny repertoire, but just knew it inside out. And every piece that he conducted and recorded, it's basically the definitive recording. When you go to Brahms 4 or Rosenkavalier, you need look no further, or Beethoven 5 and 7. These are Kleiber recordings that have just become untouchable. Living conductors. Let me throw Simon Rattle in there, because I think he'd be a great dinner companion, and I would have so many questions for him about what he's done over the course of his career. I think he would be just phenomenal. So there's the dead and alive dinner companions, Abbado, Rattle, and Kleiber. That would be fun. Sherry Brooks asked me, what a beautiful backdrop. Thank you. What drew you to it? Does it describe my personality? So this is a painting by the artist Sandy Walker. It is something actually that actually my husband got it beforehand, before we met. So it's been in his household for 30 something years, and then ours jointly for 25 years. I love it also because it's just so colorful and so vibrant. It's impossible to show it to you complete because it's a diptych and it sort of extends further this way. And if I were to sort of pan out, you would see that it isn't quite the abstract piece it appears to be close up, that it in fact is the Grand Canyon. This behind me here, this section is the north, I think the North Rim. All will become a little bit more apparent. And we like playing this game with dinner guests to that haven't been to the house before, and to take a look at it and to try and figure out what it is. And if you go far enough away and squint, then it comes into focus a little bit more. But with apologies to the style gurus of the New York Times that I was referring to earlier, who advocated having a nice beige background. I don't do beige, so maybe for future broadcasts I can go in other parts of the house and have different backdrops of different pieces of art. That might be kind of cool. Just some thoughts. Well, listen, folks, the dinner hour approaches for me here in California, and maybe for you on the East Coast as well. My job is to make dessert tonight, so I'm going to go into the kitchen and make some brownies because dessert, right? It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing this at more times in the future. But in the meantime, please take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay distant, and try and find as much joy in your life in this strange time as you can through music. I think that's a wonderful healing power for us all. So I'll leave you with those thoughts and look forward to seeing you at some point in the not too distant future. Thanks for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you actually next week because we are planning a watch party for our Classic Six concert, the Rossini, William Tell, Florence Price Symphony No. 1, and Dvorak Cello Concerto. We will do a watch party for the live stream that we did, as well as some introduction from yours truly. So tune in there, more to come on that front. But in the meantime, please take care of yourself and each other. Bye for now.